So the next thing we're going to talk about is the overlay. It's like a textural overlay. So sometimes, and this is stylistic, okay? It's not something that you necessarily have to do exactly the same way I do it, but you can overlay kind of like canvasy textures or burlap or sketch material textures, which kind of pulls you away from the rigidness of a rendering, which is something that is actually really helpful sometimes when you're trying to, kind of suspend disbelief. So for instance, like one of the things that I don't really like about this method, and you can do some other stuff like treating the edges of your render to fix it up, but basically like I don't like how all these edges here are kind of like hard edges and they almost look like they have an outline. It's just a byproduct of some of what Maxwell does using this workflow. But let's go back to Google and let's start looking at what we can do. So I'm going to show you like a canvas texture. So canvas textures are pretty nifty, especially, well, let's try and find one that actually can be used. These all have like a silly underlay over them. All right, so let's grab something like this. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to drop it in Facebook, or in Photoshop. Social Media 101. All right. So something like this, right? It's kind of, it's not like a primed one. So you can find primed canvas or you can find regular canvas. This is unprimed canvas, so you can actually see the texture of the material. But once you start to filter it out, you can create some pretty unique conditions. So, and I forget exactly which one I was using, if it was multiply or something else. So kind of bear with me here for a moment. Maybe it was lighten? No, I don't think it was lighten. Soft light or hard light. One of them doesn't really take out the color, and it just, maybe it was soft light or overlay. I think it was just overlay. So once you put it on overlay and you kind of drop the opacity down pretty low, it sort of, it pulls the render out from it being like this digital, render environment to something that's a little bit more artistic in a way. So if we get really close on it, you can see that, it's texturally, it just doesn't read the same. It doesn't read like you're playing a video game or something like that. Assuming, you even have to do that. If your render skills are that good, that's fine. But most of us don't really have that level of skill. And oftentimes it's not worth developing that level of skill while you're in school because you just don't have time for it. So anyway, something like that can work with a canvas. Let's try like a sketchy texture. Something like this is perfect. And we'll drop it into Facebook. That time I said it on purpose. Okay, so this one is basically the same thing. We're going to set it to overlay, and then we're just going to bring the texture down. Let's turn the other one off. Bring the opacity down. Okay, so this one, I actually like this one a lot better because it almost makes it look like it's like a, I don't know, it's like we colored it on like, stock crayon coloring paper, you know what I mean? So it's kind of neat. But anyway, so that's really the filtering thing. So I think if you guys master the entourage and your light leaks to create drama, and then you master some overlay settings, you can pretty much create a near professional level rendering with very little effort, just like that. So if you notice, I did all of this in probably about 30 minutes of actual work time. I set my model, set the render, put a few people, put a few trees, put a few overlay items, and then it was done. Okay, but if you're going to be doing like a lot of landscape and stuff, it's going to take a lot longer. So anyway, what questions do you have? All right, there you have it. Those are your final requirements. So you need to have each of these kinds of elements in your final render on Tuesday. Cool, let's get to it.